The United States and Britain in Prophecy. We have it abbreviated here, America and Britain, just a contrast in prophecy. It was originally entitled the United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy, renamed the United States and Britain in Prophecy. And sometimes we abbreviate it the U.S. and the U.K. in Prophecy. A book written by Herbert W. Armstrong, being read aloud by Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath. Introduction. A staggering turn in world events is due to erupt in the next few years. It will involve violently the United States, Britain, Western Europe, the Middle East. It's already rather late for the free world to come awake to the real meaning behind current world events. Why do not the world's leaders see what is coming? Why are the world's best minds unseeing? The heads of state, scientists, educators, editors, news analysts, bankers, industrialists, leaders in business and commerce, they are totally unaware. Why? Because they've been falsely educated and deceived into closing their minds to the great causes behind world events and trends. This world has been falsely educated to ignore causes and deal with effects. Yet all the world's problems and ills are simply a matter of cause and effect. There's a cause that has produced strife and war, poverty, wretchedness, inequality, crime, disease, mental ills. But the leaders do not know. World explosion to erupt. The world's leaders are the educated of the world, but they were not educated in basic truths, the foundations of right knowledge. The most necessary knowledge is not being taught. They don't know what man is or why. They know nothing of the purpose or meaning of life. They were not taught to distinguish the true values from the false. They did not learn the real causes, the way real causes to universal abundance, nor the causes of war, unhappiness, inequality, world chaos. Consequently, they guide humanity on a course in conflict with that purpose, wreaking havoc upon a distressed, suffering, unhappy mankind. Lacking knowledge of the way to peace, the world does not have peace. Leaders talk of peace. They profess to work for peace. They cry out for peace, while they give approval and blind acceptance to the way that produces war. This world has simply been going the wrong way. This world is giving assent to and conferring civilization's acceptance on the ways that are the causes of all the world's ills. And now we are fast approaching the final grand smash explosion that's going to stagger the mind of man beyond the bounds of sanity. Forces are at work today on plans, programs, conspiracies, movements that will soon erupt into a world explosion of violence and chaos such as never happened before and never will again. Men today are tampering with forces of nature they lack the prudence, knowledge, ability, and wisdom to control. In this folly of educated ignorance, it has become fashionable today and intellectually titillating to ignore the great basic cause of all things, the fact of the purpose being worked out here below, and the master plan for its working out. The invisible but supreme power now soon to intervene and drastically alter the course of history before mankind blast itself out of existence. Unreal though it may seem to those steeped in modern educational deceptions, some 2,500 years ago the supreme power of the universe inspired a man named Isaiah to quote him, saying, "I am God, there's none like me," declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, "My counsel shall stand." Isaiah 46, verses 9 and 10. The great world powers are formulating their policies, laying their plans, but the next few years will see astounding events explode in a manner very different than the nation's plan. Why? Never amiss, because there's a great God. There is the great God who says, "The eternal wrecks the purposes of pagans. He brings to nothing what the nations plan. But the eternal's purpose stands forever, and what he plans will last from age to age." The eternal looks from heaven, beholding all mankind from where he sits. He scans all who inhabit the world. He who alone made their minds, he notes all they do. Psalm 33, verses 10 through 15, Moffat translation. This same eternal God said, "To whom then will you liken me, or shall I be equal? Saith the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things?" And again, "Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. All nations before him are as nothing." Isaiah 40, verses 25 and 26, 15 and 17. Through his inspired prophets, the great God caused to be written some 2,500 years ago and preserved in writing to our time, prophecies filling approximately a third of the whole Bible. In them, he named every city of consequence of that time on earth, and also every nation. And he foretold precisely what would, through the years, happen to every city and every nation. In every instance, the prophecies came to pass. What was prophesied happened to Babylon, to Tyre, Sidon, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, to Egypt, Assyria, Chaldea, Persia, Greece, and Rome. There has not been a miss. These prophecies were accurate. And now, in other prophecies, the same supreme God has foretold precisely what is going to happen to the United States and British nations, Western Europe, the Middle East, Russia. Best minds, total ignorance. Yet the best minds in the world are in total ignorance of the unprecedented cataclysm that is about to strike. And why have these prophecies not been understood or believed? Because the vital key that unlocks prophecy to our understanding had been lost. That key is the identity of the people of the United States, the United Kingdom, the American and the British peoples in biblical prophecy. That key has been found. We present it to those whose unprejudiced eyes are willing to see. The events prophesied to strike the American and British peoples in the next few years are sure. God says, "Surely the Lord Eternal will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets." Amos 3, verse 7. These colossal world events, shrinking the first two world wars into insignificance, will come, but not until the warning has been made available for those whose eyes are willing to see. Next, on to chapter 1. And this is chapter 1 of the United States and Britain in Prophecy, originally called the United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy by Herbert W. Armstrong. The lost master key has been found. Chapter overview. There is purpose. Why this ignorance? This may sound incredible, but it's true. Editors, newscasters, foreign correspondents do not understand the real meaning of the world news they report, analyze, and discuss. Heads of government are utterly unaware of the true significance of the very world-shaking events with which they deal. They have no conception of where these events are leading. Incredible? Perhaps, but true. Winston Churchill declared before the United States Congress, "He must indeed have a blind soul who cannot see that some great purpose and design is being worked out here below, of which we have the honor to be the faithful servants." But he did not understand that purpose. That great purpose long ago was master-planned by the mastermind of the universe. There is purpose. It's true, though almost totally unrealized. Mankind was put on this earth for a purpose, and the maker of mankind sent along with the human product of his making an instruction book to reveal that purpose and to guide man in happily, enjoyably fulfilling it. But the human race has rejected the revelation and the guidance and has preferred to stumble on in the darkness of its own futile reasonings. About 1/3 of that instruction book is devoted to basic education, revealing to man the necessary foundational knowledge otherwise undiscoverable and unknowable. Knowledge of what man is, why he is, where his destiny may lead, how to reach it and live happily along the way, revealing knowledge of the true values as distinguished from the false, knowledge of the way to peace, happiness, abundant well-being. In other words, the most necessary of all knowledge, the foundation on which to build discoverable knowledge. Another approximate 1/3 of the Bible, another approximate third of that book is devoted to history, to those events and experiences fulfilling the master plan during the first 4 millennia of man's mortal sojourn as examples for our admonition and guidance today. And then approximately a third, grasp this, an entire third of our Maker's revelation to mankind is devoted to prophecy, writing the history of future events before they occur. These fourfold future events reveal the great purpose being finally worked out, being brought to its completion. These foretold future events reveal the great purpose being finally worked out, being brought to its completion. Why this ignorance? Now see why heads of state, news analysts, and the great minds of our time do not comprehend the real meaning of world events as they are shaping up right now. rational and right knowledge of this great purpose of the Creator's master plan, of where in the progression of these foreordained events we stand today, and of major happenings prophesied yet to occur, this knowledge is the essential basis for understanding the significance and true meaning of today's dynamic world news. Without this vital knowledge, none dealing in news gathering and news reporting, none responsible for government policies, can understand current world happenings or where they are leading. And not one saddled with such responsibilities does know. Not one does know. Why? Two reasons primarily. One, they've been deceived by false education, appealing to the vanity of intellect, into prejudicial and disdainful rejection of the divine revelation, which alone can impart this understanding. And two, the vital key necessary to unlock closed doors of biblical prophecy had been lost. The great world powers of our time have been and are the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, Germany, France, and other European nations. The missing vital key is simply the identity of these great world powers in biblical prophecy. The staggering and cataclysmic world-shaking events soon to erupt upon a shocked, stunned, bewildered world relate directly and specifically to the United States, Britain, Germany, Western Europe, and Russia. Not knowing how and where these nations are specifically mentioned in basic and major prophecies, the educated of the world have been utterly blinded to the plain and simple meaning of prophecy. Due to this lost key, more than anything else, the Bible has come to be discredited and rejected in this world's educational system. The unproved and unprovable theory of evolution has been substituted as the foundational concept which became the supposed rational approach to knowledge. The colossal tragedy of it, our peoples being thus falsely and deceptively educated from little children, have in a supposed era of advanced rationalism and enlightenment actually been groping around in the darkness of ignorance, misunderstanding, and confusion, totally unaware of the earth-shaking catastrophe into which they are being directly plunged. Thus, our peoples have forgotten and departed far from their Maker. They have shut their eyes and closed their ears to his dynamic revelation to mankind, which to ears that can hear thunders out the life and death warning to those in the responsible positions of power. Is it too late? Have our leaders become so steeped in a deceptive, false education, so stultified that they cannot be aroused from slumber? God help us now. Time is fast closing in on us, but the all-important master key has been found. That key is the knowledge of the astonishing identity of the American and British peoples, as well as the German, in biblical prophecies. This very eye-opening, astounding identity is the strongest proof of the inspiration and authority of the Holy Bible. It is, at the same time, the strongest proof of the very active existence of the living God. An exciting, pulsating, vital third of all the Bible is devoted to prophecy, and approximately 90% of all prophecy pertains to our time now in this latter half of the 20th century. All right, friends, I'm reading this from some video. All right, good, thank you. An exciting, pulsating, vital third of all the Bible is devoted to prophecy, and approximately 90% of all prophecy pertains to our time now in this latter half. Oh, I know why I came on screen while I was first reading that. Just to expand the book now into the 21st century. When Mr. Armstrong was writing this book, now in this latter half of the 20th century was the moment in which he was writing. And it, because God has delayed things, the reasons for that, just expand this sentence of the book into the 21st century now. It's a warning to us, to our English-speaking peoples, of immediate life and death import. Immediate because that fifth seal, Christ said in Luke 21, verse 35, comes as a snare upon all them that dwell upon the face of the whole world. It's going to come unexpectedly. All right, I guess I'm turning to that in the Bible, but I want to speed past that and just stay with the book. I'm just using this video of the text for a live reading because our audio was bad in this video that I'm reading this from. Okay, here we go. Hitherto closed vital third of all the Bible. No story of fiction ever was so strange, so fascinating, so absorbing, so packed with interest and suspense as this gripping story of our identity and our ancestry. Through it, Almighty God gives momentous warning. Those who read and heed may be spared unprecedented cataclysmic tragedy soon to strike. If our peoples and their governments will awaken, return to their living God, then our nations may be... Well, Stephen, I wish you weren't interrupting me here. All right, I don't know what I'm saying there, but let me put it on normal speed and see. And heed and return to their living God, then our nations may be spared. God, help us to understand. Next, we'll go to chapter 2 for the U.S. and Britain in prophecy. Chapter 2 by Herbert W. Armstrong, being read aloud for you here by Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath. Chapter 2, Prophecies Closed Until Now. Chapter Overview, a pivotal book, not for Old Testament Israel. Could we be ignored? One might ask, were not biblical prophecies closed and sealed? Indeed they were, until now. And even now they can be understood only by those who possess the master key to unlock them. But we've reached the approximately end of 6,000 years of biblical history. We've reached the end of an age. We are entering right now the world crisis at the close of present civilization. We face today conditions such as the world never before has witnessed. Today, the big problem is the stark question of survival. For the first time in world history, the weapons of mass destruction exist which can erase all life from the earth. Chiefs of government and world-famous scientists have been saying publicly, we must adjust to living in fear of human annihilation with no solutions in sight. To those prejudicially cynical toward the Bible, I say it is now your only hope. The Bible is now your only hope. Science offers no solutions. The politicians and heads of government have no answers. In the Bible alone, you will find the advance news of what is now certain to occur, and occur it will, before mankind blast itself out of existence. But another objector might ask, are not most of the prophecies outdated, Old Testament writings addressed only to the ancient nation Israel, of no concern to us in our time? And the answer is an emphatic no. These scintillating, dynamic prophecies were, most of them, never given to ancient Israel. A pivotal book. The plain truth is, these prophecies were written for our people of our time and for no previous people or time. They pertain to world conditions of today and could not have been understood until today. One of the very pivotal books of prophecy is the book of Daniel. Actually, the prophet Daniel was not the author of the book known by his name. The living God was its author. The message was transmitted to Daniel by God's angel. Daniel put to writing, to be preserved until our time, what he heard. At the very close of his book, Daniel wrote, "And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" And he said, the Lord God said, "Go your way, Daniel, for these words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." Daniel 12, verses 8 through 10. So the prophecies of Daniel were closed, sealed, locked up until now. But today we're living in the time of the end. Today the wise do understand. But who are the wise? Only those who fear and obey God, and who have the master key to unlock the locked-up prophecies, God says. The fear of the eternal is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. Psalm 111, verse 10. And even most professing Christians refuse utterly to do that. No wonder they can't understand. And don't forget, the specific key that unlocks these closed doors of prophecy is the definite knowledge of the true identity of the American and British nations as they are mentioned in these prophecies. Stop a moment and think. If the prophecies Daniel wrote could not be understood by him, if they were closed up and sealed till the time of the end, till the latter half of the 20th century, as the angel said and as Daniel wrote, then they were closed to the ancient Israelites of that day. They contained no message for Daniel's time. Think a little further. These prophecies could not have been given to or known by the ancient kingdom of Israel. Daniel wrote in and after the time of the Chaldean king Nebuchadnezzar's invasion and captivity of the kingdom of Judah from 604 to 585 BC. But the kingdom of Israel had long before been invaded, conquered, and its people moved out of Palestine, transported as slaves to Assyria, 721 to 718 BC. 2 Kings 17, verses 18, 23, and 24, 117 to 133 years before Daniel wrote. Years before the book of Daniel was written, most of the Assyrians, with those Israelite slaves, had migrated from ancient Assyria northwest toward Europe. Now, far northwest, where they finally settled, was not then known. How far northwest where they finally settled was not then known. They became known as the Lost 10 Tribes. But today, we do know. Today, as Daniel wrote in Daniel 12, verse 4, knowledge has indeed increased. The whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes is one of the ancient mysteries now cleared up. But in Daniel's day, they were lost from view, as if the earth had opened her mouth and swallowed them. Not for Old Testament Israel. Daniel's prophecy then was not a message to the Old Testament kingdom of Israel. Now think further. Nor was this prophecy a message for the Old Testament kingdom of Judah. When Daniel wrote, the Jews already were slaves in Babylon. Daniel was one of the brilliant young princes of Judah, specially chosen for service in the king's palace in Babylon. Daniel chapter 1, verses 3 through 6. Daniel's strenuous duties in the Gentile king's service did not allow him to deliver this closed and sealed message to the scattered Jewish slaves. In this condition of slavery, the Jews had no system of religious meetings, no priesthood. There was no such thing as a printing press, no way to print and distribute literature. And besides, the prophecy was closed up and sealed till the time of the end, our time now. The book of Daniel was not a message for the Jews of Old Testament times. Finally, realize it is emphatically clear that these prophecies pertain to no time but to our time in this 20th century. Then know this further. Our Bible, to most, has been the book of Revelation, but the book of Daniel is the key to the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, solely and alone do we find the world events of all prophecies correlated in order of time sequence. The book of Revelation then holds the key for putting together all of the prophecies in proper time order. And Revelation, too, was a closed and sealed book until our time now. We realize that the living Jesus is the revelator, and that he has stripped off the seals and opened this mystery book to right understanding. And he did that through God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong, explaining that Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21 is the plain language opening and understanding to the seven seals. And where does that lead us? To the fact that prophecy generally was written and preserved for our time today. And some 90% of all prophecy pertains actually to this latter half of this 20th century and into the first part of the 21st century. And the one central master key to prophecy as a whole is the identity of the United States and the British people. All right, we're doing another break there. Let me see if I can speed that up. All right, good. That was a short one. Is the identity of the United States and the British nations, which are your peoples, in these prophecies for today. These prophecies could not pertain to any time previous to our precarious present. The United States became great world powers until the 19th century. Suddenly, in the very beginning of the 19th century, these two, until then small minor countries, suddenly spurted to national power and greatness among nations as no nations had ever grown and multiplied in wealth, resources, and power before. London had become the financial hub of the world, out of its swaddling clothes of the 13 original states, and had acquired the expansive Louisiana Purchase. It was fast sprouting up to become the mightiest nation of all time. But Britain burst forth to greatness first, and until the world wars had become the greatest world empire, had become the greatest empire or commonwealth of nations in all history. Could we be ignored? Between them, the British and American peoples had acquired more than 2/3, almost 3/4 of all the cultivated physical resources and wealth of the world. All other nations combined possessed barely more than 1/4. Britannia ruled the waves, and the world's commerce was carried on by water. The sun never set on British possessions. Now think, could the British and American peoples be ignored in prophecies of world conditions that fill 1/3 of the entire Bible, when some 90% of all those prophecies pertain to national and international world happenings of our time now? Staggering? Indeed it is. And yet, precisely as prophesied, Britain's sun has now set. As these same prophecies that foretold Britain's greatness revealed far in advance, Britain has already been reduced to a second-rate or third-rate power in the world. And the United States? Today, the United States finds herself heir to just about all the international problems and headaches in this post-World War II chaotic, violent world. And the United States has won her last war. Even little North Vietnam held her at bay. Many other nations sap America's national strength, and he knows it not. He knoweth it not, as God long ago foretold. On the world scene, nothing is so important right now as to know where the white English-speaking peoples are identified in scores and hundreds of prophecies which describe vividly our sudden rise to national power and reveal the causes of that greatness. Prophecies that paint a crystal clear picture of our present international dilemma. Prophecies that open our eyes wide to see what now lies immediately ahead for our nations and what our ultimate and final status shall be. And that's the end of chapter 2. Next, we'll go on to chapter 3 of the United States and Britain in prophecy. Page 1 in the purple hymnal, Blessed and Happy is the Man. All right, let me put that back in regular speed.